What? Night school? Does that even count as being in college? Any low achiever can attend there. It's preposterous to even call it a college. I can't let my precious daughter marry someone like you.
Said my father-in-law, glancing at me with disdain. I had come to propose to my beloved Catherine, but her father was vehemently opposed to our marriage. I may be attending a night school, but it's a legitimate college. How dare he say like that? But even if it's night school, I started to argue, but he cut me off.
That's why I hate idiots. Get out of my sight, you loser.
He threw a tissue box at me, filled with contempt. Unable to stand it, I stormed out of their house. Years later, I would encounter my father-in-law again, and his attitude would be dramatically different. This is the story of reverse of my life. My name is Thomas Johnson. Raised by a single mother, we struggled financially. My mother worked multiple part-time jobs and did piecework at home. Sometimes, she even took night shifts, constantly working. She was already frail and seemed to shrink further under the strain, despite knowing how hard she worked. I felt helpless and frustrated. During the summer of my second year in high school, the inevitable happened. My mother collapsed at her job. Although it wasn't life-threatening, she was hospitalized for a few days. Fortunately, my mother's hospital stay was brief, and she was soon discharged. Despite the doctor's advice to ease her exhausting workload, she promptly returned to her usual routine, insisting she was fully recovered. However, once broken, things don't heal that quickly. Eventually, she needed to be admitted to a general hospital. Time passed, and I was in the summer of my third year in high school, a period when everyone struggles with their future paths. I was no exception, grappling with the dilemma, what can I do for my mom? This became a pivotal point in deciding my future. Now, my mother is hospitalized. Thanks to her hard work, we had some financial breathing room. But considering her potential prolonged hospital stay, I thought about working right after graduating high school. Unsure whom to turn to for advice, I confided in my teacher. My teacher listened and then quietly said,
Johnson, your desire to help your mother is commendable, but you have impressive academic achievements. I believe you should also consider pursuing college. It will broaden the ways you can help your mother. Plus, there's the option of part-time student. You can work during the day and study at night. It would be a shame to stop your education now.
I was surprised by my teacher's advice. At that time, I hadn't known about part-time student. After graduating high school, I was torn between working or continuing to college. I only knew these two options, but attending and part-time student meant I could earn money for my mom's hospital and living expenses while studying. This would expand the ways I could help her in the future. My worries about my path cleared up, and I successfully enrolled in a part-time student the following spring. As a part-time student, I immediately started looking for work. I took any job I could find, from store shifts and night labor to manual work at construction sites. I wasn't picky about the work. I just did whatever seemed possible. At night, I attended college to study. Whenever I had a bit of spare time, I visited my mother at the hospital. Though living near the hospital was helpful, this life meant earning money, but not having enough time with my mother. That worried me. Once, while killing time at the hospital's cafe before visiting my mother, something caught my eye. Reaching for a napkin, I noticed a cute handwritten note in the holder. Cafe staff needed inside the hospital. Work surrounded by beautiful views and the aroma of coffee. It struck me. That was it. A way to earn money while spending more time with my mother. I might not be a doctor, but I could work in the hospital's cafe. Always close to my mother, close to home. Plus, it would save on travel expenses. I approached the counter. "Excuse me, I'm interested in working here," I said to an employee named Catherine. She smiled warmly.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
"Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to it too." Soon after, I began working at the cafe with Catherine Smith. Of course, there were other staff members, but she was always there, no matter when I clocked in. So, most of what I learned was from Catherine. She was bright, always smiling, carefree yet serious, and dedicated to her work. She seemed to love working at this cafe, and she was a great teacher. Thanks to her, I quickly learned the job and was thriving. The cafe inside the hospital wasn't overly crowded, but there was a constant flow of people. Patients in gowns, casually dressed visitors, doctors in white coats, and nurses. Especially, seeing the patients who come in every day stirred an indescribable sadness in me. I made sure to treat all customers equally and respectfully. However, I must admit, there was a hint of envy and jealousy towards the doctors and nurses. Of course, I was grateful to them for treating and caring for my currently hospitalized mother. I'm grateful to the doctors and nurses who do things for my mother that I can't. But maybe that's why. Somehow, I felt they lived in a different world than me. Gratitude and jealousy, is it? My feelings were complex.
Johnson, I'm stepping out for a bit. Can you keep an eye on the shop? Call me if anything comes up.
Yay, sure, I got it. After working for a while, Catherine and I, being close in age, had grown quite friendly and could talk openly. She really is a thoughtful, wonderful person. As I watched Catherine leave the cafe, an elderly man in a white coat approached me. He wasn't a usual sight in the cafe, but I recognized his face.
"Oh, is that you, Thomas?"
"Dr. Brown, thank you for everything."
"Ah, so it is you. Sorry for not being around lately. How old are you now?"
"I just turned 20.
"Well, time waits for no one, does it? You've grown up."
Dr. Brown was my mother's primary physician. Also, he is the director of this hospital. You'd expect a general hospital director to be quite pompous, but he is different. He doesn't act superior like other doctors and has a very human touch. He remembers each patient and their family personally. And his skills are unquestionably exceptional. He's an amazing doctor without a single flaw. Because of his character, he's very popular among doctors, nurses, and patients and is always busy. Some patients even travel from afar specifically to see him. He often regrets not being able to spend enough time with each patient.
I had some spare time, so I decided to visit the cafe after a long while. I love the courtyard view from here. It's quite soothing, right?
Yes, it is. I often find myself getting lost in it.
I can imagine. By the way, you're working here at the cafe now, Thomas.
Yes, that's right. It's close to my home and I can visit my mom easily. It's a really good job for me. As you said, the view is lovely.
Oh, that's great. But at your age, you're probably in college, right? I don't mean to pry, but are you not attending school?
I'm going to a night school. During the day, I work here to earn money for my mom's hospital bills and our living expenses.
That's a smart approach. You're always so clever, Thomas.
Dr. Brown thought for a moment and then said, "I've just had an idea." Dr. Brown,
Yes, I've just had a great idea. Would you like to hear it?
following his suggestion, I started working as a nursing assistant at the hospital. Nursing assistants don't require specific qualifications. It's a job where I can take care of patients, support nurses, and maintain the hospital environment without being directly involved in medical procedures. I even got to care for my mom a bit. Nursing assistants are predominantly women, yet the job often involves physical labor. So, I took the initiative in heavy lifting and physical tasks, utilizing the strength I had built from previous manual labor. After completing the task, I took a deep breath and the head nurse approached me.
Good job, Thomas. Ever since you joined, you've taken on most of the physically demanding tasks. I feel bad for relying on you so much, but you've been a huge help. Thank you.
Being appreciated was genuinely fulfilling, especially coming from the head nurse. The work of a nursing assistant is tough, tougher than any job I've had before. But being thanked and seeing the joy it brings makes the hardship vanish into thin air. It might seem trivial to some, but helping others and bringing them joy meant everything to me. I found a sense of purpose in working at the hospital, helping people. It made me aspire to be a doctor, to save more lives. This was the first time I vaguely thought about becoming a doctor. Until now, I had worked relentlessly just to survive. But now, I wonder if even someone like me can dream. Could I become a doctor if I worked hard enough? I felt excited for the first time in a while, imagining a bright future. There's another reason I feel optimistic about the future. It's about Catherine, with whom I worked at the cafe. Not long after we met, Catherine and I began dating. Now, our relationship has progressed to the point where we're considering marriage. We never fight, and I feel a bit pampered by Catherine's generous heart. She understands my circumstances and continues to support and stand by me, even now as a nursing assistant. We were truly happy. As time went on, we finally decided to meet each other's parents to talk about marriage. First up were Catherine's parents. Her father works as a doctor at the General Hospital. It makes sense now why Catherine was working at the hospital's cafe. Perhaps her parents wanted her to work somewhere under their watchful eyes, cherishing her as their precious daughter. But I haven't actually met Catherine's father yet. However, hearing from the head nurse and that stern doctor that Dr. Smith is quite intimidating and often seen scolding people made me a bit nervous about meeting him. Moreover, Catherine is an only child. I doubted that her parents would easily agree to let their treasured daughter marry just like that. My anxiety grew.
Hey, are you okay? You look pretty pale. Are you nervous?
Catherine furrowed her brows and smiled at me. Yeah, sorry. It's just, I am pretty nervous.
It's okay. I know there are rumors that he's scary, but I'm here with you, right?
How pathetic of me. I've never been this nervous in my entire life. We slowly made our way to Catherine's house.
Here we are.
Catherine suddenly stopped. I looked around, and there was a mansion just like out of a painting. Wow, this is incredible.
Don't worry. Come on in.
Guided by Catherine, I entered through the grand entrance where her parents were waiting.
Hello, Thomas. Welcome.
Catherine's mother is always kind, like mother, like daughter. But Catherine's father looked stern, his mouth a tight line as he stared at me. Was he glaring at me? It didn't feel welcoming at all.
Come on, we're going to the living room.
Led by Catherine's mother, we all headed to the living room. While having tea and chatting, Catherine's father finally spoke.
You. Which college do you attend?
H College.
H College. I heard you work at the cafe even during the day.
Oh, I attend night school. His questioning felt intimidating, but I answered anyway. Catherine's father snorted.
What, night school? Is that even considered attending college? That's just a place where even the lowest of the low can go. It's not even worthy of being called a college. Just a gathering place for lowlifes.
At that moment, I must have looked like a complete fool. A simple answer returned with tenfold of sarcasm. Ignoring Midam's strict expression, he continued,
When you entered this property, didn't you feel out of place? Didn't you feel even a bit that this place was not suitable for someone like you?
Catherine and her mother looked a bit concerned from the corner of my eye.
Well, working together is fine. Being friends is fine too. But when it comes to marrying my daughter, it's a different matter. I can see a lowly night school student like you making Catherine happy. Leave now.
I gathered my courage and spoke to Catherine's father. I don't believe I can make Catherine happy as I am now, but I aim to become a doctor in the future. So, please, when I mentioned my dream of becoming a doctor, Catherine's father raised his voice.
How naive you are. You say you aim to be a doctor. Being a doctor is not something just anyone can become. What do you need? A sharp mind and money. Both are essential. But what about you now? Night school, wasn't it? What can you learn there? You think you can become a doctor just by watching others work. Even with all the studying, you won't even make it into medical school with a brain like yours. We live in different worlds. The path to becoming a doctor is even more difficult after getting into medical school. You, who can't even reach the starting line, aspire to be a doctor. I don't want to see your face. Get out.
As he said that, he threw a tissue box at my face. I couldn't stand it anymore. Holding back tears that threatened to spill, I ran out of the house.
Thomas, wait, please.
I heard Catherine's voice as I ran. Her voice grew closer, and she grabbed my arm.
Thomas.
Seeing Catherine breathless and looking at me, my tears finally flowed.
I'm so sorry for my father's rudeness. I know, sorry isn't enough, but
Catherine, on the verge of tears herself, apologizing to me sincerely. The only thing I could say to her was, "Catherine, look up, no more apologies." Sure, I was shocked by your father's words, but I understand what he meant. You are their precious only daughter. It's no wonder they can't easily accept someone like me from just anywhere. That's okay, because your happiness is my happiness. I was ready to let go of Catherine. It was painful, but inevitable. However, I was determined to do whatever I could. I wouldn't give up any further. Time passed, and 20 years later, I'm now in a lab coat in a general hospital. The facilities here are great. Having a bit of free time, I was chatting with Dr. Brown. Then, from a distance, a familiar voice reached my ears.
Oh hey, Director. Hello there.
The voice approached. At first, I couldn't remember, but when I saw the face clearly, it clicked.
Oh, it's you, Dr. Smith. How have you been? It's been a while since we last talked.
Smith, Catherine's father. There I was, next to Dr. Brown, and opposite us was Catherine's father. He seemed oblivious to my presence, chatting with Dr. Brown, and finally glanced my way.
Oh, you are, the guy who went to night school, right? I remember you. You gave us quite a show back then.
I vaguely remember those days. I thought of saying something like, "You haven't changed at all," but he continued, dripping with sarcasm.
Well, and that lab coat. What's wrong? Poor and sick now. You should seek divine intervention.
That's when Dr. Brown sighed heavily and addressed Catherine's father.
Dr. Smith, I'm dismayed to hear that. You should be seeking help from him, right here. Thomas Johnson will be your savior.
Catherine's father, confused, paused and then started laughing.
Director, that's a poor joke. How could any disaster lead me to seek help from him?
Listen, as the director of this hospital, I'm dead serious. Your surgeon is this man right here, Thomas Johnson. He is the one who will cure your illness.
What?
It was unbelievable. It seemed as if a miracle had occurred, judging by the look on Catherine's father's face. The story goes back a few days. When Catherine's father had a checkup, something was found. Further detailed examinations revealed a disease. He had no symptoms, but it couldn't be ignored. If left untreated, it would certainly lead to death. Surgery was necessary for this difficult disease. There were many skilled doctors at this hospital, but who could ensure a successful surgery? Who would take on this crucial task? And Dr. Brown shows me.
Director, this is absolutely preposterous. Is he not sick? How can someone ill treat someone's illness? Besides, he has no education. First and foremost, without a medical license, he can't perform surgery.
Dr. Brown, speechless with disbelief, couldn't muster a response. I decided to speak up for my own honor. Dr. Smith, with all due respect, I am not ill. I'm wearing this examination gown for a checkup. I've returned to this country after a long time, and the director recommended I get checked. Also, I genuinely hold a medical license. Back when I was working as a nursing assistant, Dr. Brown caught me secretly watching the doctor's work. He approached me about it. At that moment, I confessed my aspiration to become a doctor. He listened attentively, nodding along. He recognized my dedication and passion for medicine and agreed to support my medical education financially. I questioned him about his willingness to fund a stranger like me. "I'm grateful for your offer, but why would you do this to someone like me, like a stranger?"
Well, Thomas, that's a sad thing to say. You are not a stranger to me. First, you are the child of a patient dear to me, and an important part of our hospital family. You have a very dedicated heart. And with your sharp mind, you understand the mission you've been given. You want to help people like your mother, to make many happy, right? I see a younger version of myself in you. That's why I think it's natural for me to want to help you. This is an investment in the future for me.
I was indeed fortunate to be surrounded by such people. Relying on his words, I studied hard to get transferred to medical school. The other doctors assisted me, and Dr. Brown himself taught me whenever he could. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I had to repeat a year, but eventually managed to get into medical school. Once in, everything went smoothly, and I successfully obtained my medical license. Catherine's father listened to my story, but still seemed skeptical, frowning in disbelief. Well, he was the one who had said those things back then. It's no surprise he wouldn't believe it.
It's hard to believe, even if we assume you have a medical license. My illness isn't something just anyone can treat. It's not a common disease. A complicated surgery like this can't be entrusted to a novice doctor like you.
Dr. Smith, I thought you were a dedicated physician, always up to date with medical information. But I was wrong. Not knowing Johnson's numerous achievements, it seems you've been slacking in keeping informed.
Dr. Brown spoke, clearly dismayed. When I finally obtained my medical license with the help of lots of people, I was elated to finally be able to make my mother happy. But then she passed away.
Thomas, now you have to make not just me but many people happy. There are many in this world who need your hands. I was happy to have such a fine son like you.
My mom's kind words were my last support. My mom's spirit still lives on in my heart. Carrying her words close to my heart, the words she left me, to save as many people as I can with my hands, I decided to dedicate myself as a member of Doctors Without Borders to helping those in need around the world. This job often took me to dangerous places. In some overseas locations, medical practices are not as advanced as in the US, and the challenges are unique. There were places rife with infectious diseases, where I even felt my own life was in danger. But I went, regardless of the risks. Thankfully, my relentless efforts were recognized globally, and now I'm a sought-after surgeon, receiving calls from around the world. In this country, I'm embarrassingly treated with high regard in almost any hospital I visit. Recently, I've been busy touring countries, and upon returning from a hospital in Southeast Asia, I was contacted by Dr. Brown about Catherine's father's case. Though he had once belittled me if he needed my help, I had no reason to refuse. I returned to Catherine's father after hearing about his condition from Dr. Brown and agreeing to be the lead surgeon.
Thomas, or should I say, Dr. Johnson, the world-renowned doctor. I'm really grateful. It must be a complex situation for you. But please, do this favor for me.
Overdoing it a bit, aren't you? Besides, I can separate personal feelings from my work.
I see.
It's been 20 years, but it must have been a shocking turn of events for Catherine's father. Still disbelieving, he wore a puzzled expression, but as it was time for the next examination, I said, "Dr. Smith, I assure you that I will cure your disease and ensure you can continue your admirable work as a doctor. I will make this surgery a success." He nodded in agreement, and Catherine's father still looked incredulous. I left the room, heading to the next examination. Several days passed, and it was time for his surgery. As expected, the surgery was extremely challenging and took several hours. Nonetheless, it was a success. Recovery depends on the patient, but he should be able to return to work soon. It was one of the most nerve-wracking surgeries I had performed in a while. After the surgery, I conducted several follow-up examinations. Catherine's father, checking his own test results and medical records, seemed pleased each time. On one of the examination days, "Dr. Smith, how are you feeling today? Any changes?"
Thomas, no, Dr. Johnson. I truly can't thank you enough. My health is undoubtedly improving every day. All thanks to you.
What? Could it be an overdose of some medication? I've never seen him so subservient before.
Dr. Johnson, your skills are truly authentic. Please forgive my many past indiscretions. If I had been the one performing my surgery, honestly, it probably wouldn't have been successful. But you managed to do it in just a few hours. Your skills are a treasure to the American and indeed the global medical community. I'm truly embarrassed that I was unaware of such a remarkable physician as yourself. It's shameful that I've been so arrogant. It's presumptuous of me to ask, but I must swallow my pride and request this. Please, once I'm able to come back again, could I possibly learn directly from you, Dr. Johnson? I'd be grateful to gain from your skills and knowledge.
Dr. Smith, you're being too kind. I separate my professional life from my personal life, so please don't worry. I'm still learning myself. Someone with your extensive experience as a doctor would have already mastered all the techniques and knowledge I know. For now, please don't think too much and just rest. Maintaining the professional demeanor of a doctor with a patient, trying not to add any psychological stress, I left the room after making sure everything was all right. It's funny, though, how people can completely change their attitude. But I had to refocus and went to see my next patient. His condition remained stable, and he would likely be discharged soon. Once again, he would return to his role as a doctor, continuing to save many patients. With a bit of spare time, I decided to visit the cafe where I used to work.
Welcome.
A young man about the age I was back then greeted me. He, too, was gazing out the window at the view. Yes, this view is still as calming as it was. I get it, young man. Despite the busyness of my life, the view remained unchanged, still offering solace. Then I heard a familiar voice from afar.
Is that you, Thomas?
It was Catherine. People change over 20 years, but some semblances remain. Catherine, You haven't changed a bit. It's been a long time.
Fancy meeting here again. It reminds me of when we first met.
Yeah, it's been decades. Are you here to visit your father?
Yeah, I have some time before visiting ours. So I thought I'd stop by. And then to meet the man who saved my father's life, Thomas. No, Dr. Johnson. I've heard about your work. You've been saving lives all over the world. And then, in a roundabout way, you saved my father's life too. I can't thank you enough. Really, thank you.
Catherine excitedly grasped my hand. Surprised, I looked down at our joined hands and noticed something sparkling on her left ring finger. A ring. Of course. 20 years is a long time. A woman like Catherine would have had many suitors. It's sad, but if I said it didn't hurt, I'd be lying. I found myself staring at Catherine's wedding ring for quite some time. Then Catherine spoke up.
Oh, this. I got married a few years ago. Thomas, I'm really sorry about that time. I was genuinely happy with you, spending those days together. I was serious about marrying you. But then, the day you came to visit my home, I think I hurt you beyond imagination. I've always felt a pang of guilt about it. I wanted to apologize, but I didn't have the courage. I don't think saying sorry now changes anything, but I've been wanting to say it for so long. I'm truly sorry.
So Catherine had been blaming herself all these years, maybe even for decades. Catherine, you haven't done anything wrong since then, so don't worry about it. In fact, thanks to your father going so far as to say what he did, it kind of lit a fire under me. His words made me work harder to get to where I am now.
Thomas, you haven't changed. You're still so kind.
It's not true that I wasn't bothered by it. Somewhere in my heart, I thought that if I became a respectable doctor, I could start over with Catherine, maybe even gain her father's approval. But as I got busy with my medical career, those feelings faded, and I focused purely on wanting to help as many people as possible. So this reunion, being able to talk with Catherine again, feels like closure. Anyway, it's the visiting time, right? Your father was looking forward to seeing you after a long time.
Oh, right. I have to go. Thank you for getting along with my father. I'll hear more about your accomplishments from him later. See you.
I watched Catherine leave and then turned my gaze back to the scenery outside the window. Mom, are you watching? Despite everything, I'm living a happy life. I sometimes wonder what it would be like if Mom were here. In my life, there have been many obstacles. There were many difficulties. There were headwinds, too. But no matter how tough the road, if you keep your core and keep running, a path will surely open up. As a doctor, I want to save lives. But I also want to pass on this belief. It might save someone's heart, too. For the joy of many, I continue my consultations today